Greetings, welcome to Channel 6. I'm your host. This is a review of the Atari 7800. Let's take a look at the venerable system. There it is. Ooh. Ah. It is a pretty impressive piece of hardware for the 80s, actually. We're going to take a look at some of the stats. It's so shiny. They put this metal strip instead of by 87 when this came out, they didn't have the wood grain anymore. They had this black, futuristic, sciencey, or kind of like cybertech looking thing, but that wasn't really a big thing yet. And they put this shiny metallic, the Atari 7800 Pro system. So if you have one of these, you're a professional. Okay. What we're going to do now, I'm going to transition to the screen for where to go. We are going to go and take a look at some information about it. I like to do a brief little intro here. And they styled a new version of the Atari 20. Oh no, that's the European 7800. There's an Atari 2600 Junior that looks very similar. That European, these joysticks, I have one somewhere. I might bring it out for 7800 games. Just, they're two fire button, and they might only be, I don't know if they have two separate fire buttons. They have two buttons. It might be the same button for right and left-handed, but this isn't nearly as much fun. I have get it free. I have a Wyco command control. These are arcade style. They have leaf switches in them. It's practically an arcade level joystick, about the closest you could get in the 80s. And if you want an authentic play of these games with decent control, that's a way to go. My boy just went to his sleepy spot, but I don't have the cam. It's right here on the tripod. Oh well. My little boy Chitin, he's my black kitty. So, it came out in 86. Officially released. I thought it was 87. It might not have been available where I was. A re-release. It was announced. See, if that had done this in 84, 85, instead of, well, if that had just did it instead of this system, the joysticks are a headache. Keeping them operating is a headache, and they don't work really well. But the company was sold, as it says. So they set it aside. Its competitor, Coleco, the ColecoVision, which I've already reviewed, has very good graphics, not exactly arcade quality, but they're close. Yeah, it mirrored the arcade games. And the arcade games, if you were around in the 80s and you were a video gamer, the arcade was the thing. The home games just didn't have the element of the arcade where you went and actually played against people you didn't even know, might never see, and you were competing for high scores against these people. I'm just doing a spot check. Yep, all good. And you'd go in and try to take a high score. First you had to get good enough, so you actually had to go and play for a while. And then you'd sometimes struggle back and forth, like you'd take a high score, and some dude you didn't even know would come in and take your score, and you'd come in and take it. And then there were people you knew. There was a guy that worked at a jewelry store. He would come to the arcade to watch me play a game called Mappy, and I'd go and say hi, and he'd be like, "Hey, you gonna play Mappy later?" I'm like, "Yeah, maybe." And I got good at Mappy. There was another guy that was really good that was teaching me. He wouldn't play with me because it took too long. It took like 3 hours for us to play the game. Does it tell you what the Pacman game was? They sold the company to this guy, Jack Trammell. He actually founded Commodore International. Interesting. I know he was involved with Commodore. Interesting. Something I wasn't aware of. And everybody has a different idea, and they had a different idea about how they wanted to market the company and do things. It's more powerful than some systems and less powerful. The TIA chip. It was released in 1984. Then it must have been... Oh, and they had some... See, 1984, Miss Pacman, Pole Position, Centipede, Joust, Dig Dug, Robotron, Galaga. This is a home computer game here. This was a pretty cool game. It was a first-person game. Ball Blazer was another FPV. Xevious. These games, it would have done great. It would have killed. Then they sold the game and they were stopped. I mean, that wasn't the thing to stop. And then they brought it back out after NES. Because NES went in, instead of just a video game, as an entertainment system. May of 1986 for $80. I got mine secondhand at a yard sale or thrift store in the mid-90s. I didn't even know about it. I'd never seen one before. They sold 100,000. That's not a lot. The Master System sold 125,000. The NES sold 1.1 million. So that tells you. They were high-quality versions of the arcade games. But the issue was they waited so long that it didn't have the same impact. And Nintendo came out with some pretty decent games at the time that really got people into it. And then stuff got ported to the Nintendo eventually. I think Atari probably did some of the porting. Oh, interesting. This is a little thing. Huh. Active 1986 and 1991, Europe up to 91. 1992, they conked it down. Said, nope, no more. Motherboard of it. I don't think I've actually had this one open. 4K of RAM. I think the Atari 20... Does it tell us what the... We'll look at the Atari 2600. I think it had like 128 bytes. So this is a much more powerful system. And it's got built-in ROM for a BIOS. 48K cartridge ROM without bank switching. It had some custom chips. Its resolution is 160 by 240. Or a 320 by 240. So you think about that on your 1920 by 1080, or my Linux dual monitor is 5120 by 1440. So you think about what we're actually going to be looking here. And it details all the color capacity. Now, we're actually just playing 2600 games tonight. So you're not going to see any of that big capacity. I wonder if a prototype exists, either of those, the Atari 3600 or the CX9000, that's something. I want to get one of those game pads. I want to pick one of those up. But let's go poke over to the Atari 2600 for a second. I saw it up here somewhere. I saw something else. It was originally called the Atari 3600. It makes sense. 2600, 3600. The Atari 2600. Let's go take a look at its capacity. It was competing against a whole host of different systems like the Fairchild Channel F and the Bally Astrocade. So when it came out, this was a hot thing. I had one. I had a Sears Video Arcade. Probably in 1979 or 1980. I don't have a precise date. It was a heavy sixer. And I wanted Asteroids. It was the first arcade game I played. Probably the first electronic video game, if you don't include the home version of Pong. Because I played that a couple of years before. And where's its stats? It's gone through, the 2600's gone through a few iterations. That Japan only one looks pretty slick, the 2800. And then there's the 2600 Junior. That's the one I was talking about. Ooh, look at that display. Who wants one of those? Hey, where's the system specs? How much memory did it have? It was cheaper than the 6502 because it didn't have as much memory. It was limited to 4K total, I think. It had 128 bytes of RAM. Now, they did go to bank switching and have 8K games, but the memory was really expensive. Most of them were like 2K or 4K, and the 4K was a more expensive package. And it had a selection for a black and white television. Think about that. You didn't always have color on your video screen. I had a color one when I got a second one in 1982, and I had a 13-inch color TV. I think I've seen it played on a black and white. I might have did it myself. So let's go over to the filming interface for our little machine. I'm going to set these up now. And I'm going to move that here. Donk. So I want to go here. Where is it? Right there. Okay. I think at this point I've already got audio levels set. So I'm going to go over to the Atari 7800 screen. But I've got to plug things in here. So 7800 has power and pause, and the 2600 games don't pause. You got to have a 7800 game. The select and the reset switches are common to these systems. There's 2 joystick ports under here. They're kind of hard to see. They're the 9-pin little slot with an A and B difficulty selector, and I don't actually see any notation. I'm guessing that left is easy. On the back, we've got the RF adapter that goes to the TV. It goes to one of those little boxes, or you can get a 75 ohm adapter. I'd recommend those. TV channel switch, channel 3 or 4. A lot of places had channel 4, and it had the least interference on channel 3, and some had channel 3, so you pick the one with the least interference. The power adapter, yep, and hopefully if you saw the switches right there, it's having autofocus issues there. The power adapter, I want to get a look at that because it's this odd little slot with 2 pins. It's not like the phono jack style. If you get one of these and you need to replace the power adapter, you're actually going to have to cut the wire and get a power adapter and put this little funky thing on it. I really don't like these proprietary, and this is proprietary in a way that no other system like connector. There's all kind of barrel connectors. That's really proprietary. This is my RCA jack end. I've got one of those 75 ohm. I don't have that little switch box because they're prone to having issues. So it is plugged in. I'm having issues between the power cord and my headset wire. There we go. So when you power it on, it's probably not going to do anything because I don't have. You get a little, you can't see. You get a little red LED light. Back then in the 80s, if something had an LED, it was probably red. That was pretty typical. I don't remember having too many color. They could colorize an LED by putting different shaded things in front of it, like a little light. I don't know if we had white ones. I know we had red. So we are now going to switch over to the appropriate source. I'll take us to the big monitor. This is how I film these. I point a camera at this, and you'll notice that my monitor is rather shiny. And that will cause some artifacts because I got to have the studio lighting. And I'm just checking to see if I've got, and it's hard to do at this point. I'm kind of looking to see if I've got the full frame and it's flat. It's not trapezoided. So we're going to pick a game. This is my stack of Activision games. I want to take you back to the others so you can get a good view. These are my Activision games we're going to play. I got a whole series of them. Activision made games like this, and this stuff was really good. People really enjoyed these back in the 80s. These were, I believe the programmers, you can look it up, they worked for Atari and they wanted recognition. There was a policy, especially corporate Atari, once Warner Brothers had was brought in for the financing, that programmers didn't get credit. They were just like factory workers or maintenance people, something like that. refuse collectors. There was no glory or recognition in it. And Warren Robinette, who'd created Adventure, which I can show you he snuck a signature in. And why not have credit for these people? Were kind of like sort of heroes to the video gaming enthusiasts. And a bunch of them went and started Activision to put out their materials. And it even says on Pitfall, created, conceived, and designed by David Crane. And there's probably another list of names in the manual, like the people that were with him. Back then, it was like one person, one programmer, and they were both genders, male and female. I know we have a few more noted now, but this was the 70s and 80s. There really were only two. It's just how it was. And there were male and female programmers at Atari. I don't know the exact counts. You can probably look it up online, but think about that. This was the 70s. This was the 80s. We had just gone through some equality things, and boom, there it was. So Activision and they really kind of a notch above a lot of Atari games, even the professionally produced ones from Atari. They did a really good job. And I think that's one of the reasons Activision is still around today, even though it's no longer quite this. So I'm looking at these games, and I've got a couple of favorites, and there's some I'm not familiar with. Let's start with Chopper Command. We're going to see what happens. I already set the sound levels. I already had it turned on. They don't always turn on. Let's go over to our system. I've kind of got a control camera here with this. I sort of got it in view, so you'll sort of be able to see. Not really. Once my hands are here, you've got to be able to have the control. Let's see what happens. And this happens a good bit. This happens a good bit. I might have to actually clean every one of these cartridges. I already cleaned a couple. And you might hear that. Pfft. It'll happen. At least I know the audio level's pretty decent, but this is what we do. We come over here. I'm going back. We take a swab, because I like to use the cotton swab. And you get just rubbing alcohol. 50% is good. If you've ever used an alcohol stove, you want the 90%. Somewhere above 80% for your stove. So for cleaning cartridges, this is fine. And you just rub this little connector. Get in there and you rub along the metal contacts. And you can dry it off, like I can dry it off with this, or you let it dry. It dries in seconds. You want to keep this closed because it'll dry out. Now I'm looking for a place to sit it down. It's going behind my teacup, and then you let that air out. Plug it back in and see if it works. It helps if you plug it in the right way. Now let's see what happens. Nothing. We might not be playing this one. Oh, is that it? Is it up? It's up. Here we go. Okay, and because these systems had such small resolution, the filming, even as long as the autofocus doesn't go too far, I'll see if I can get it focused better. I'm only going to do this one time. It looks pretty good. Okay, that's it. Okay, my little power pack behind the camera, this little white bit that you probably can't see because it's small, is actually charging better than the extension cable had. So, back to the game. Let's see what this game does. Some of them start with a fire button, but this one you have to hit reset. And I'm looking for level. Reset? You don't know what to do. Oh. So, this end of the joystick goes in the control port. There we go. Now let's see what... Yep. And you have to protect your boat, your truck's boat. Don't get shot. And I'm probably not going to play a lot of each game until later. See, you hover above your truck. Oh, is there an extra set of convoy? Yes, there are. And you destroy these enemies. I don't know what this thing back here is. Oh, it's a whole bunch of enemies. So this is a Defender-style game. I really like at the top of the screen the mountains and the sky colors. I've actually made a background out of that. Wow. These games are challenging, and especially one I'm not used to. Let's try one more time. And it's kind of like in the Defender style. Oh, except it's a lot trickier. Defender, you had some leeway. When you changed directions, it would shift you away from enemies. And you don't want them to bomb your trucks. And you have a little radar screen at the bottom that tells you where your enemies are. There's one over there over top of my trucks right now. I don't think I don't know. Oh, I cleared it. I don't know if the jets actually bomb, but the helicopter does. Oh, they might have to be a certain height. And you kind of got to glance down at the radar. There's a game I'll do better at. And as an example, I'm gonna run out of tea. I do have Defender we can look at. Just a quick example so you can compare. I might have to clean every one of these. Sometimes you could just extract it and put it back in. This was hardware compatible with the 2600, but some games won't play very good. And this is Defender. And you defend along your planet. Oh, man. These are aliens trying to steal your humanoids. And just like you're up above, there's a radar on top. And you want to kill all this stuff. These things want to steal your humanoids. They don't destroy them instantly. They take them to the top of the screen and mutate them. And this is actually slightly easier to play on this version. The system had a lot of limitations, and the 7800 doesn't enhance the 2600's limitations. So you'll see a lot of sprite flickering and things like that. This game was really ambitious. In the arcade, it had about, I'm only playing one level. In the arcade, it had 5 or 6 buttons and an up-down joystick. It was an intense game. One of the most famous games is Pitfall, and this went on to spawn sequels and things like this. I've already had this one turned on. There's a little bit of shift sticking it in. Did I bomb it? No. In this game, you run through this jungle environment, and this was a really impressive one for the elements it had on screen and the way it put them together in so many different combinations. Some pits open and close and you have to run across them. Others have lines. Just, there's a few elements here, like maybe 10 elements, and they did a really good job with this. At the time Indiana Jones was out, it was really popular. And this just really appealed. There's actually a special path, because when you go underground, it skips screens above ground. It's hard to get over the scorpions. We might try that. And you can you can go down those and go through, and you can get through all like 255 or 256 screens, which, considering this thing probably only has 4K of memory, of ROM, and 128 bytes of RAM available. The 7800 has more, but this is a 2600 game. This is pretty impressive. For the stats it has, they did all this. It has a timer instead of, well, it has a score and a timer. You had to complete it in a certain amount of time. If you run to the left when you die, you skip the hazard. Pro tip. It is a pro system. And you collect these treasures. You got to watch the closing pits because they'll come out and get you. And you can always take the vine. They'll get you safely across the pit. Oh, I thought I could. I almost fell in. I thought I could avoid the log. There is a way to not get hit. I was pretty good. I didn't have to get hit by logs at all. And I'll try to show you the no, it's hard to get over there. You've got to be so precise, but I skipped him. And okay. Well, that's that. I always liked the fire, the way it flickered back and forth. I thought that was really cool. I think this is one of the games, if you were going to mod an Atari 2600 game, this would be a good one. And there are mods for it. Pitfall II is the follow-up, The Lost Caverns. It's actually hard to run. It had special hardware. It had a special sound chip and extra memory, and it may not turn on. This one is notoriously difficult, even when it's cleaned, to get working. And this was a common thing with the Atari 2600, was these little fail screens that did weird graphics. If you just showed up, welcome. I am reviewing an Atari 7800 with Atari 2600 Activision games. Upside down. It's Pitfall. And Pitfall 2. This was a really awesome one. They did a really good job with them. I'm kind of hoping it runs. Do I have it? Did we get it? Did we get it? I don't know. I'm going to have some tea. I'm going to yeet it in there one more time. Fill my tea up. Okay, let's try one more time. Good luck. All right, let's see. This one is even on a regular Atari 2600. I don't think we're going to get Pitfall 2. Keystone Capers is a game that I haven't played very often, and I'm just going to pop it in here to show, but it doesn't come on. I'm not worried about it. So far, we've only got the one that didn't mark. When it comes up like that, it's actually the TV that it flicks on for a second, then it like adjusts, because of CRT, it would just be on. And I think when I get to the Commodore 64 and the Atari ST, I think I have to. I'm going to use actual tube monitors that I have. I might go back and play some of these games. I'm going to have to figure out the film setup for the tube monitor because it's not this big monitor. But we'll do that. I'm looking at the screen and it doesn't look right. And I don't know why. Huh. You're seeing the whole thing anyways, but it should actually have the entire panel there. It may be misadjusted. That's all right for this. If it fills the whole screen, then we have a slight issue. So this game, I kind of forget what you do. You have to jump over those things. You have to collect a thing. You're a cop and there's robbers. And you have to get in the elevator. And I don't know if you have to catch the guy. I don't know how to get in the elevator. You have to do something, and I'm not sure what it is. You should be able to just push into that. I'm not really familiar with that game. And we've got a couple of other things I want to promo. Spider Fighter? And my labels are they're going kind of funky. I don't know that much about Spider Fighter. It looks like a complicated game. It's amazing what they did with some of these games. And at this point, I know one of my favorites is going to play. And if these don't work, I'm not really going to worry about it. Oh, I like that one effect. Sometimes you can just pull them out and stick them back in, and they come up. Did we get it? Yes. I'm not sure why. That might be a 7800 thing. I thought we got it. Maybe we didn't. Yeah. We didn't get Spider Fighter. We've got Robot Tank. Robot Tank is like a it's like a Battlezone clone. They actually have Battlezone, very similarly done. You might wonder how you do a Battlezone game from a vector to raster, but you can do it. For the vector games, you wanted the Vectrex, and I have one, and it was functioning. We get it? Yeah. This is a... it becomes a cantankerous thing, but you figure this came out in 1986. In 6 years, that's 34 years ago. In 6 years, it'll be 40 years old. And my Atari 2600 is 4 years older. Wait, I had it. It was there. I saw it. Sometimes that's all you have to do is grab the... I'm not sure this is going to work. Something tells me this one doesn't want to work. I just got a little hint. This doesn't want to work. Okay. It's a Battlezone clone. Later, I might do each individual game. I might do a couple games at a time. But we're getting down to some of my favorites. I've got a couple of examples. I don't know if I'm going to... I don't think I'm going to do tonight. But two of my favorites were Mega Mania. And I didn't actually have this one in. This was a pretty cool... There was a game called... let me clean it. I'll show you the cart. There was a game called... Was it Astro Fighter? It was an arcade game. There were two of them. One was Astro Fighter and one was Astro stuff. There was a lot of space stuff in those days. That's the Mega Mania cart. And stuff scrolls across the screen and you're like Space Invaders style down on the bottom of the screen. And you had to zap it all. This is a fairly challenging game. And you have to... Oh, I can barely see this stuff. I don't know why, but I can't see their shots. I think the graphic... Okay. Let us... Pause turns it black and white. Nothing's hitting me. Let us go back. I'm going to see... I cannot see their shots. That blue is not turning out. And I need to remember where the TV setting is because I'm going to mess with it. I'm looking for the thing I want to mess with. Picture mode. Picture mode, user, standard, dynamic. These all look the same. Movie. I guess I'm actually going to have to go in and see what I can do. This is the kind of thing you have to do. If I had a tube TV, it would look great because the way they project the image is slightly different. But let's bump the contrast a little bit. And can we not? Brightness. I'm going to bump the brightness up a little. I don't know what it's going to look like until I watch the film in color. This might be the thing that gets the blue to stand out better. I'm not sure. Sharp. Can we make it slightly sharper? That's getting rid of some of that fuzz. I still doesn't look like I'm going to be able Cool. Let's try that. Let's see what it looks like. And it might be the studio lighting, because their shots are the same color as my ship, and they're just blurring into the background. It's sort of a Space Invaders style game, but they all do something different. And in a lot of arcade games, the first screen's always the easiest. And this is one of the ones I wanted to play, because I used to play a bit of this. See, one thing they didn't do is they didn't license arcade games. They just made their own similar styled things. But they made really good games. Think about that. In the beginning, oh, I want to get that. Activision didn't license official titles. I think that went through. Because that cost money. And they were a startup. And that's one of the things that sunk Atari was $20 million or something like that to license the extraterrestrial property to produce a game. You really want to try and hit these the first time, because they'll trap you like that and there's nothing you can do when they do it. And I didn't think you might be able to avoid them. There's not that many left. Not hitting them. These things, some of them are tricky. I think these are supposed to be radial tires, because there's a graphic on the front. And you also run out of energy, so you really want to clear this. I can't get it. He's that weird end one. And then it gives you more energy. These ones that just go across, even though they come down the screen, they're a good bit easier to kill. It's a very challenging. A lot of these are challenging. You need the hand-eye coordination, which I pretty much kept up with. And you need muscle memory. You need to know what's going to happen pretty much. And I have a stack of games here. I already had this one out today. This Laser Blast is one of my favorite, and I'm probably going to play this for a little bit. I do have some more games, but I think I'm going to leave them for next time. But let's take a look at Miss Pacman, because we're going to take a look at Pacman. Hopefully it runs. Atari got the license for Pacman. I believe it was Namco in Japan. Yeah, it's working. And I think over here, Bali Midway might have had it. And for the home market, Atari licensed it, because obviously somebody else had the arcade. And it would have been a big deal. Now, if you've played Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, you know, this is an approximation. It's, you know, with this system, you're not going to get that close to the arcade. But it's good enough for the home, especially for $20 or $30 or whatever the cartridge was. And let's just bump this up and see what it sounds like, because they did a really good job. It's got music. It's got the maze. And when I show you Atari 2600, you'll kind of understand. I'm already in trouble. There is flickering. The Pac-Man had terrible flickering. There is flickering. And the fruits move where they're stationary in 2600. They did some things like putting an energizer in these tunnels. I'm just going to grab an energizer and get these guys. Well, I say I'm going to get these guys. And you can kind of tell how long they're blue. Well, let's try to get the fruit if we can. I'm just grinding through this. I want to try and get to the second maze. There's different mazes, just like in the arcade game. Come here. I'm going to munch you. Munch, munch, munch. It's the munch game. Today it would be known as the munch game. Yep. Oh, well. But this was a technological achievement, and they had to use more memory, so it cost more. One of my all-time favorite games, I was playing this earlier when Dances was on my channel. in my chat. And this, I can play this game for a while, and I think I'm going to play this for a bit. This was one of my favorite games in the 80s, and this is so basic. You have a flying saucer. There are bases down below, kind of like the reverse of Space Invaders. And you shoot lasers that do instant damage. That's all there is to it, and it's a ton of fun. And I already have an issue in that I have an itch on my back. See if I can do it. You have a chance to kill them on the way down. You get a new ship every 1,000 points. So let's see how good I do. It gets harder and the points go up too. Generally, there's a place you sit. If you hit the first base, the other two will move before they shoot you. So pretty much you have to get a strike on the first. And I might cut into this film the game I played earlier because I was doing really good. See how if they have to move, they don't shoot. I got an extra guy at 1,000 points. If they have to move, they don't shoot right away. So part of the key is shooting that first base instantly. And you sit right about here between the 8 and the 9 on the score, and you get him instantly. Because if they have to move, they don't target you right away. And that's part of the trick to this game. Ancient 80s game strategy. And this is it. Some of these games, like this and Kaboom, almost have a mesmerizing quality. I got 4 extra guys. I lost how many? They have an almost mesmerizing quality. Like, it's not quite automatic that you're playing, and I woke up the muscle memory already. That's why I'm doing so good. Because I already woke up this muscle memory. And this is just a certain rhythm that I remember from, more than 30 years back. I got 6 extra guys already. If you just showed up, welcome to Channel 6. I'm filming a review of the venerable Atari 7800. It was a follow-up to the Atari 2600. And it had these, like, graphically not super awesome, but really fun games. You didn't need the graphics back then as much. I mean, it'd been nice to have them, but they made these great games. There was a time when Activision came out with really great games. If you move when they fire, you can usually avoid them, but this is just this rhythm that I remember. It helps to have a better joystick, and you only get 6 guys, I think. I don't think you get more than 6. So if you want a break and you have 6 guys, wait until you get up close. Let's see how many we need to shoot. If you're going to die, now's the time to do it. And it's also a good time to practice dodging. Because I'm going to get an extra guy. Oh, wait, didn't give me an extra guy. Should have given me one. I wonder if I'll get an extra guy. I can easily build up extra guys in this because it's that rhythm. 10,000. Yeah. That was odd that I didn't get an extra guy for crossing. Maybe when I died, I already crossed it. So not right before, like 750 points is if you're going to die. Now I'm back up to 6, and I could probably play this for a while. It might have higher difficulty settings. I don't remember for sure. I'm not sure it has a two players simultaneous would be awesome, and more bases. This would be a great game to mod. If I ever get into Atari 2600 modding, this is definitely going to be one of my things. Because people have modified Adventure, they've modified Miss Pacman. There's a few games they've modded pretty extensively. I don't think this is one of them, because you can just take a binary download of it. Or capture from the ROM cart, and if you know assembler 6502, which I do know. My first home system was a Commodore 64, which has a 6502 base CPU in it. I did a good bit of coding. I just sit here, boom, boom, boom. I don't even need extra guys. They're not kidding me. If you miss, though, you can be in trouble. But if you hit that first one, they have to move after you hit them, and you just eat them up. I could probably play this for hours. I'm not planning on it because I want to go edit Quake maps at midnight. I know it's close. Oh, it's past midnight. Yeah, I want to wind this up. It's interesting when you get one as it gets you. And I will easily... I'll get an extra guy blowing him up. Yep. Burp, burp, burp. I see that my bots are doing their job. If you came up in chat, I might have missed it. I'll check when I'm done here. I'm going to close this out. Oh yeah, I'm stopping at 20,000 just because I could keep going all night. And I need to put my camera in charge. Let's see if that gives me. As they kill you, you get an extra guy. You wouldn't think something, it's got right and left and fire. And you're taking out 3 bases, and once it hits this difficulty level, it's the same. One more and I got an extra guy. I played a lot of this, so I'm pretty good at it. I'm going to have to check that screen. I might have shifted the camera. So, let's go back to this view. I'm going to set up for my exit. That's interesting. Oh yeah, right. Because that's still up. The Atari 7800. If you come across one of these for a reasonable price, I'd say somewhere up to 20 or 30. But the thing is this, make sure it has the power pack. Otherwise, you're going to have the craftiness. And you could probably fabricate one of these, especially if you had a bunch of these little connectors of differing types. But you want a working power pack so you get this little thing. Because in this, otherwise, you're going to have to cultivate the skills to open the case up and wire into this directly. And you could... It's just a PCB. You could solder 2 wires on there and make your own custom connector. It's a lot of fun system, and the nice thing about getting one of these is you get all these Atari 2600 games. And the Atari 2600 had a library, I think maybe it was in excess of 500 games. Let's go back to, let me go back to the main thing, the main screen. And then we'll take a look. We'll take a look at how many, I'm going off of that view. I actually need the this view. We'll take a look. Let's see if we've got its library count. I have one of these 2 switchers, and I have the Sears Video Arcade 6 switcher. Total unique... Sears Video Arcade, that's what I had. It might have been 1979, it might have been 1980. It depends on when I played Asteroids the first time. In junior high school, I was in Spanish, and the Spanish teachers put together a soccer club. And after practice, we practiced for a couple of weeks. My mom got out of work like within 15 minutes, so she'd come and get me because I don't think they had the regular bus. It wasn't high school where they have an athletic bus after everybody else leaves to take people home. Well, right next to the school was an old malt shop from the 50s. And you walked in, and the counter, the soda counter was on the right. Well, on the left was a hallway that went to the bathroom, and they had Asteroids, Space Invaders, Galaxians, and some clown game. And that Asteroids game was something. That was something. And unreleased prototypes. What? The Atari 2600 wireless controllers. I want a count of the games. Do they tell us? Decline and redesign. Revisions. Graphics. Controllers. Legacy. Clones. Games. Let's see if it tells us. 1977, 9 games were released on cartridge. They had other things besides cartridge. They had the StarPath Supercharger, which was a plug-in, and I think it used cassette tapes. And you bought the tapes, and they loaded them. And it also had, I believe, a dial-up service. How many games were there? 700,000 total Atari 2600. That was Atari. They had unsold lots of Pacman and E.T. that ended up in a landfill. And if you're a fan of Angry Video Game Nerd, he went and dug some up, and they're really there. Well, as far as we know. It doesn't give us a count. We're going to look it up because I'm curious how many the Atari 2600 library. I want to count, making sure I got the right screen. List of the Atari 2600 games. I just want a total. 526 games. That's a lot of games, and this was one of the earliest consoles. So there's a lot of games. Let's see if it's got the console generations anywhere. Atari 2600. 1979 launch titles. Atari hardware, video game console, second generation. This is what I want. We're going to take a look at this if they've got the listing. I have an Atari. Actually, I might have two. I had an Intellivision. It didn't work. I got rid of it. I've got the Odyssey 2. I've got the... I've actually got the Bally Professional Arcade, the first release, of which they only had about 8,000. I do not have the Fairchild Channel F. And some of these things are getting kind of pricey, and I don't have the Emerson Arcadia. That's also probably $300 to get one now. I have a ColecoVision. I have an Atari 5200. I have a Vectrex. So I don't have any of these oddball things, and I don't think these are cartridge. One of these might use cartridges. There's this weird Vision TV boy. It almost looks like it's supposed to mimic a TV studio wipe controller, I want to call it. So, that was the Atari 7800 review. If you can get one, do find one with the accurate power adapter, unless it's been modded to accept a regular plug. And one nice mod you can do is a direct video out. I believe it goes to an RCA jack, and it doesn't have the, it doesn't require, and I don't have one over here, one of the little switch boxes. Okay, that's the review. I'm going to set up my exit. I'm ending the film. Then, if you're watching my stream, I am going to continue with... I don't have my thing. I am going to continue... Why does this seem so odd? I've got to find something that... It was set up and I don't know. Oh, I did it on a different screen. I'm going to continue with some Quake map editing. I should make a map like my background behind me here. I got to get some of this studio stuff out of my way. That's it. It's a cool system. If you can get one for a reasonable price with some decent games, and you get the Atari 7800 games, I'm going to show you those next time that I have this system out. I think I might do the Bally Astro Arcade, the Bally Professional Arcade, because that's an interesting system. Its cartridges look like cassettes. I'm picking out my exit music. I've got something. Everyone, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will have reviews and information about a lot more systems that I have. I own those second generation systems. Please be excellent to each other. Oh, you know what I don't have? I'm not on the button. I need my buttons. Thank you. I'll be seeing you.